So welcome back. It's your all-American Vanilla Gorilla Dad here. And I want to take a moment to address something that, that I've been asked quite a bit. I've been asked by people I know, friends and family and such, that why am I liberal? Why am I Democrat? And why am I so anti-Donald Trump and anti-Maga? Well, I think it boils down to some of the core belief structure that underlies two different ways of thinking. As I was growing up, I was led to believe that the Republican Party they were all about family values. They were about pro-law enforcement. They were about pro-military. And they were about self-sufficiency. And they were about economic vitality. Hey, Bubby. And that they were about the government staying out of your personal life. And then the opposite was that supposedly Democrats were all about wanting to run your life, having big government, taking from the rich and just giving to the poor and lazy, and basically punishing the working man, the hard worker, the innovators. And the fact is throughout my lifetime, my adulthood, basically everything that the Republican Party proclaimed to stand for has not been demonstrated. So let's just take a look at pro-family. Well, if you were pro-family, you were all about family values, whose family are you talking about? Well, you're clearly only talking about your version of it. Your Christian, so-called, nuclear family. Well, the thing of it is that most of these people don't actually abide by that. I've heard Republicans who've been divorced and remarried 2 or 3 or 4 times talking about how gay people are ruining the sanctity of marriage. Well, that's nonsensical. If you were pro-family, you would be for all sorts of families. Wouldn't matter if they were gay, straight, mixed race. None of those things would matter. What you'd be about is, are there 2 adults who are acting as in a union to provide for children and to help people? That's pro-family. Not trying to push your exact definition of family upon everyone else. It would be recognizing the value of the multitude of families out there. And that's what I see the Democrats supporting more in my 30 plus years as an adult. When it comes to pro-law enforcement, I think that the Republicans have dropped the ball. You could not be more exemplified by Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrection. But it goes deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that. Some of the most atrocious and audacious criminal acts have happened by corporations in the pursuit of profit. Well, and most of these are at the expense of the general public. And who do you think supports most of these people, these big corporations? It's the Republican Party. They excuse it. They justify it. It's just part of doing business. So when it comes to pro-military, well, I was in the military. And I can assure you, I was in the military when George Bush was president during 9/11. And there was nothing that George Bush or his administration did to support soldiers. When they say they're pro-military industrial complex. They're all for spending billions and billions of dollars in for-profit companies while soldiers are making $20,000 a year. And at that time, we started deploying people 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times. And there was an article in the Army Times while I was in which George detailed how George Bush vetoed a bill that would have paid a bonus, a daily bonus to any soldier. And I cannot recall the exact, I want to say it was if you were deployed more than like 500 or 550 days in a 2-year span, meaning that you were deployed a significant portion of 2-year span, that every day after that, you'd be given a bonus. And he said that it was too expensive, that we couldn't handle that. All the while giving multi-billion-dollar no-bid contracts to his vice president's former company and the others like that. So they didn't value the soldiers, they valued the profit-making companies in the military. So that one was debunked. When it comes to being fiscally responsible, well, the idea of simply reducing taxes does not make you financially responsible. Cutting your revenue in regards to how much you're spending does not make you financially responsible. And the facts are, and this is something you can verify easily on the internet, is that the debt has went up greater in the last, say, 50 years under Republican regimes as opposed to Democrats in office. Because this idea that we cut taxes on the rich, that somehow that's going to spur the economy, well, in the short term, you may see some benefit, but not the individuals. I mean, the tax cuts that Trump has imposed are in no way benefiting you or I. Certainly not to the degree that they have benefited the billionaires. So how come there's not all this super terrific job growth and economic boom? Because the trickle-down theory is bullshit. It's been proven debunked time after time after time. Closest to me, the most recent, was in Kansas under Jerry Brownback. Kansas is still trying to recover. The school's funding was cut. So what happens was they cut all these taxes and then they decide afterward, oh shit, we don't have any fucking money, because the theory that somehow the economy was going to boom, it didn't happen. And then they start cutting taxes. And where do you think they cut the most from? Education and healthcare. Well, who does education and healthcare benefit? It doesn't benefit billionaires. Billionaires couldn't give two fucks about education and healthcare. They can afford whatever they want, whatever they need. It affects the masses. So therefore, it actually downplays the possibility and minimizes the idea of economic ascension. Because there has to be a framework in there. There has to be, you have to, first of all, be able to be educated without being put into major debt, and you have to be able to stay healthy without being in major debt. So therefore, this idea that their economic policies benefit everyone all is just absolute nonsense. Now let's get to the idea of personal responsibility, because this one's important to me. Because I do believe that with every thing that the government should provide for you, or that our society should provide for you, should be balanced by the individual contributing something themselves. So for instance, if you want to be that person that says healthcare is a right, I basically agree with that. However, taking care of yourself is your responsibility, so as to not overburden that system. And I do see that there are people who take advantage of that. However, under the current regime, it is impossible for me to believe that there's any Republican. Donald Trump has never, ever, ever taken responsibility for his actions. He has always blamed someone else. He whines and cries like a freaking baby. I mean, I have twin 10-month-olds that cry less than Donald Trump does. Donald Trump was born into extreme wealth, handed extreme wealth, yet whines and cries about how unfair life has been to him. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo, Donald. So this notion that Republicans are all about personal responsibility and all is absolute nonsense. So let's take a look at this. So they're not about personal responsibility. They're not actually about law enforcement, supporting the law and order and law enforcement. They're about bashing people's heads in, wearing masks, hiding their identities, and terrorizing people. That's their idea of pro-law enforcement. Their idea of pro-military is simply profiteering. And their idea of family values is ripping children away from their families, not helping out people, and hating on someone who wants to be in a family simply because they don't fit the mold that they believe families should be in. So essentially, everything about the Republican philosophy, the proclaimed Republican philosophy, turns out to be absolute bullshit. And they're hypocrites. Now, none of this makes the Democrats perfect, because I've got plenty of grievances and complaints with the Democrats as a party. First, however, when I look at the two, it's not even close. Democrats are about helping people, sometimes to detriment. I'm not going to lie. There are definitely people who take advantage of the Democratic way of their philosophy. There are definitely people who need to step up and take more personal responsibility, who rely way too much on the government. So I do think there has to be some level of balance there. We cannot simply provide everything for everybody. That's not practical. It's not realistic. There has to be some level of personal responsibility. But we are a society of people. We are the United States. This is not the individual compete against each other states of America. It's the United States of America, where we should be helping each other out. We should be thinking about our fellow person. And if you are someone who has done well in life, and I'm not talking about the person who has a good paying job and maybe is a little bit middle class or upper middle class. I'm talking about the extreme wealthy. You do have a responsibility to the rest of society. Our society has allowed you to flourish, and therefore you owe in return. You owe for the fact that there was the foundation laid before you were even born. That there was the infrastructure that allows whatever it is that you flourish at to flourish. And of course, your personal initiative, your drive, those things mattered. But you would not have been able to succeed in a society that was not structured for that. And those things cost. So you do owe. The billionaires of the world do owe. They owe so that the rest of us can live a flourishing life and can have at least just a little bit of what we were promised. And unfortunately, people like Donald Trump, they have no desire to continue that. They play on your hate. They play on your fear. And why do they do that? To satisfy their greed. And until the Republican Party purges itself of Donald Trump and this entire way of thinking, there's absolutely no way that I could ever support them. So, and I would rather debate with a Democrat over the exact ways to better our society than to worship someone who absolutely does nothing. He actually has disdain. He hates the people who love him. But what he loves is them cheering him on. And that's just asinine to me. It's absolutely asinine that you would think that that is making our country better. So I hope that answered your question of where I come from, because what I've seen is straight hypocrisy. I mean, this dates all the way back to, say, the 90s, when a person like Newt Gingrich, for instance, was criticizing Bill Clinton and trying to impeach him and remove him office for doing the very same things that he did. Yes, the Republican Party is the party of hypocrisy. And until that changes, you will never, ever, ever get my support. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Hit that button, like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. and think about it. Think about what's really important to you. And then we'll see where you actually align. Have a great day.